Beijing announces historic measures to save its ailing property sector. Will it work? Coming up on Business Matters. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for being here with me on this Friday afternoon. I'm your host, Don Ma. Of course, we're starting off with markets first. U.S. stocks today ended mixed as investors took a breather here after a weeks-long rally. So benchmark S&P 500 edged up higher after parting losses, while the Nasdaq fell as well. But both scored a fourth straight week of gains. The Dow rose to the fifth week of advances in a row, and all three major indexes recorded highs yesterday when the Dow hit the 40,000 milestone before closing in the red. So, today is a bit of a digestion day. So we just broke out of the record high. The cause of death for a Boeing whistleblower, John Barnett, has been revealed. He's found dead in a car, and a coroner from Charleston, South Carolina said, quote, "The manner of death is best deemed suicide." Charleston police says there was no evidence of forced entry or physical struggle inside the car, and there was a note that suggests Barnett was going through personal distress, which only has his fingerprints on it. 62-year-old John Barnett was found dead in a vehicle in March on the same day he was supposed to testify about Boeing in court. There have been questions about his sudden death. His lawyers urged the county to investigate. The coroner's office had said he died from, quote, what appears to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Barnett worked for 30 years at Boeing as a quality control engineer before retiring in 2017. He recently became a vocal critic of the company's safety and production quality practices. And what else is happening today? A former leader at OpenAI shares some scathing comments on the safety culture of the company he used to work for. Yang Lei resigned from OpenAI earlier this week. He used to run OpenAI's super alignment team alongside another OpenAI co-founder who also resigned. The team was founded last July and focused on the existential dangers of AI. CNBC reporting today that the team has been dissolved. Lei wrote a series of posts on X. He said, quote, "Building smarter than human machines is an inherently dangerous endeavor. OpenAI is shouldering an enormous responsibility on behalf of all of humanity." He continued, quote, "But over the past years, safety culture and processes have taken a back seat to shiny products." Lei said he believes OpenAI must become a safety-first AGI company. AGI, of course, is short for Artificial General Intelligence. In a reply to Lei's post, OpenAI CEO Altman said that, quote, "He's right. We have a lot more to do. We are committed to doing it." And Reddit shares jumped nearly 10% today. Just a day ago, if you remember, the site announced a partnership with artificial intelligence firm OpenAI. The deal aims to draw in more users to Reddit with AI-enhanced experience. Reddit is also looking to explore new monetization channels. That's including offering creator tools and licensing its data to third parties. Reddit is a relatively smaller player in the social media market with active daily user base of more than 80 million. It went public on the New York Stock Exchange on March 21st, and the shares have climbed 66% since then. Okay, moving on from that, retail darling GameStop continued to fall today after saying it would sell up to 45 million shares. Its shares dropped nearly 20% today, and it's down 15% for the week. GameStop appears to be trying to take advantage of the meme stock frenzy this week. Its shares saw its highest trading volume in 3 years so far this week. GameStop also forecast first quarter net sales to drop for nearly 30% from a year ago. So the video game retailer has been struggling for years now, since it mostly relies on sales at its brick and mortar stores as customers transition to buying games and collectibles online. Another meme stock, AMC, lodged a smaller decline today, falling 4%. Still, it's got a monthly gain of 52% so far. Okay, we have some China-related stories for you today. The country has unveiled wide-ranging measures to rescue its property sector. That's including asking local governments across the country to buy unsold homes from struggling developers and easing rules on purchases. NTD's Charles Marshall has more on that.
China announced some of its strongest measures yet to try to stabilize its crisis-hit property sector. One of the key strategies being rolled out involves local governments buying unsold apartments. Authorities will be able to buy some homes at reasonable prices to provide affordable housing. This is according to China's vice premier. China Real Estate Newspaper, a publication managed by the Housing Ministry, said the policies marked a significant historic moment for the sector. But there was no detail on how long this would take or how it would be funded. Analysts note that local authorities in China are already some $9 trillion in debt. Officials also promised forceful efforts to deliver unfinished homes. In addition, China's central bank will be providing 1 trillion yuan or 138 billion in extra funding to the sector. The funding will facilitate efforts such as supporting the redevelopment of some urban areas with older buildings. China's central bank also announced the slashing of minimum mortgage rate for both new and existing homes. The move comes after years of turmoil in the sector. It all began in 2021 when officials started taking steps to tackle the massive debts built up by some property firms. Many major developers have since defaulted or gone under. That has left China littered with millions of unsold or unfinished homes. Previous steps to drive a rebound don't seem to have worked. Recent data have shown home prices, sales, and investments all continuing to tumble. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
For more analysis on the new announcement, I spoke to China economic analyst Antonio Graceffo. Here's what he said. Antonio, thank you very much for being here with me today. I wanted your comments on the Chinese regime, what some are calling historic measures here of buying unsold homes from property developers. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's definitely historic because it's a very large move, and we've been waiting for Beijing to do a large move. It is not a solution in any way, shape, or form because you're not actually resolving the issue. You're just kicking it down the road again. So now you're going to take taxpayer money or you're going to take debt and you're going to use that to subsidize local governments or provincial governments to buy up these properties, and then they're going to sell them at below market prices. How is this a solution?
Well, it's providing liquidity to debt-strapped developers, no?
Yeah, okay, but why do you want the debt-strapped developers to have liquidity? You're right, it is providing liquidity. Okay, and how does that benefit anybody? So that means what? That they can go build more properties. You've got a sector that's already in trouble because they built a product nobody wants. So now you're going to give them money to subsidize further production of this product that nobody wants. And no one wants it at the market price. So now the government is going to buy this product at the market price and sell it at a below market price. So this is pure communism. I mean, we're edging into pure communism at this point. This is no longer socialism with Chinese characteristics.
So I think the real savior of the sector is private demand. I'm wondering if there are fewer, properties out there, will that stimulate demand in the private sector?
So having fewer properties available will not stimulate demand. However, we have to look at, number one, we have to look at why are people not buying the properties, because there certainly are people who want properties who don't have them, and then meanwhile we have tons and tons and tons of unsold properties. Now, in a market economy, what would happen is the price would come down to market. It would come down to whatever people are willing to pay, and the market would clear. That's not happening in China, which means there was price support that was keeping the prices high. So the main thing Beijing could do to solve this would just be to pull all the government controls out and just let some of the property sector firms fail, let some of these properties go to market price, which might be 50% of the current market price, the artificial market price, and just clear out the market naturally.
What do you think about the central bank in China trying to stimulate demand by lowering down payment rates and as well as mortgage rates?
I mean, so those are all good things to do. If your goal is to encourage people to buy houses, that is a good thing to do. However, the question is, why aren't people buying houses in China? And is it really because the interest rates were too high or the down payments were too high? And the answer really is the prices are too high. They're artificially high. Now, is Beijing also suppressing prices, or are they going to allow prices to come to market? And if they did, they wouldn't need these other stimulus. The property sector is artificially buoyed by government policies, and then that keeps the prices too high. Meanwhile, China is having an economic crisis effectively, and young people just don't have money to buy apartments. So again, if we allowed the market forces to come in, what would happen is these apartments would come down in price. The parents would help the kids buy the apartments. People would be able to get married. There would be more babies. All the problems China is facing right now, everything from the aging crisis to everything else, would just solve itself if you had market forces.
Antonio, thank you very much for your time today, and hope you have a good night.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, our next story centers around whether illegal immigrants are posing as food delivery drivers to spy on U.S. military bases for foreign governments. So this is what one Republican House member is saying that is happening. Glenn Grothman from Wisconsin told the Daily Mail that there are reports of Chinese, Russians, and Iranians who've been caught spying on or near military bases. He believes that foreign nationals may be getting jobs as DoorDash drivers and then snooping around U.S. military installations. Grothman blames the rise in espionage attempts on the record number of non-Hispanic foreign nationals entering the U.S. southern border illegally. And Hong Kong will allow mainland China's pilot digital currency to be used in shops in the city. This is according to the head of its de facto central bank today. This is marking a major step forward for Beijing's efforts to internationalize the yuan. The program will allow mainland Chinese and Hong Kong residents to open digital yuan wallets via a mobile app and will permit them to make payments in retail shops and some online stores in Hong Kong and in mainland China. So a little bit of background information here. Transactions using the digital yuan hit 1.8 trillion, or about $249 million as of the end of June last year, with 120 million digital wallets opened, according to China's central bank. However, the yuan's use in global finance remains low. As well, Shanghai has eased data export curbs wanted by Tesla. The local government there has compiled a list of data that can be transferred overseas without security assessments. And this is according to an official document seen by Reuters. So specifically here, the government of Shanghai has compiled that list. It's a list of data for sectors that require the least regulation for transfers outside of the country. Now, these sectors include smart vehicles, mutual funds, and biomedicine. The newly announced data transfer rules take effect immediately, and the Shanghai government's new scheme with foreign companies include Tesla, Ford, and BMW, and this is according to a person with direct knowledge of the matter. Coming up after the break, auto workers in Alabama vote not to unionize, hampering the UAW's plans to unionize the South. And as the U.S. marches forward in the green transition, is it more and more dependent on China? We speak to an expert to find out after the break. And welcome back to Business Matters. So what else is happening today? Boeing shareholders have approved a nearly $33 million pay package for outgoing CEO Dave Calhoun. That's the highest package ever paid to the company's chief executive. This despite the fact that Boeing has been struggling financially for 5 years. Calhoun was also today re-elected to stay on Boeing's board. And General Motors and South Korea's LG Energy Solution, LG Electronics, established a $150 million fund and is to provide relief to Chevrolet Bolt EV owners affected by defective batteries. So GM faced numerous complaints about fires actually in some vehicles. And more people are now moving into Detroit, Michigan than out of it for the first time in decades. That's according to a new population estimate released today by the U.S. Census. The Bureau says that's the first time since 1957 that the state didn't lose in population. Although the reason for the growth wasn't provided, but the city's mayor is thanking the people who, quote, has put in the hard work to make Detroit a great place to live. And the results are in. Over 5,000 auto workers in Alabama have declined to join the United Auto Workers Union. NTD's Dave Martin has more.
5,000 auto workers at an Alabama Mercedes-Benz plant have declined to join the United Auto Workers Union, with 56% voting against. A huge loss for the union, which plans to spread throughout the Deep South, a place historically hostile to unions. This comes right after an historic union victory at a Volkswagen plant in Tennessee, where an overwhelming majority of auto workers voted pro-union. Labor experts say unions may ride this momentum to expand in the South. The United Auto Workers say they want to spread their union to all the car makers. In an online video, UAW President Shawn Fain says he's receiving an overwhelming response from workers at non-union companies.
Workers across the country, from the West to the Midwest, and especially in the South, are reaching out to join our movement.
The UAW currently has more than 400,000 active members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico.
If you are a unionized worker, it is fantastic for you. It is not so good, though, for the people who do not get employed because of the existence of the union.
Economics lecturer Robert Wright says we have to look not just at what's seen, but also at what's unseen. This includes those who don't get employed because of higher labor costs, union hiring practices, union work rules, or union-created entry barriers.
And also higher costs for businesses, which might be passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices, or might be passed on to shareholders in the form of lower profits.
Mercedes-Benz rejected claims it prevented union organizing efforts in Alabama. It says it fully respects its team members' choice whether to unionize. This is Dave Martin for NTD News.
Now, let's talk about the U.S. green transition here. As we march forward down the path, are we becoming more and more dependent on China? Well, earlier I spoke to Diana Furchtgott-Roth from the Heritage Foundation about this subject. Diana, thank you so much for your time today. So the story here is the International Energy Agency released its latest report on the global critical minerals outlook. And one thing that I want your thoughts on is that the report found that for the types of graphite used in certain batteries, nearly 95% of supply growth will likely come from China, and as well as 75% of growth in the supply of rare earth elements will come from just a handful of countries here. So I do see a number of risk factors in that. What are your thoughts?
Well, there are certainly risk factors in having China dominate this market. So there's 2 points to make. First of all, the United States has critical minerals, but it's very difficult to access those because of permitting. And if President Biden wants America to be moving towards renewables and electric vehicles, he should speed up the permitting process so that American producers can mine the critical minerals that we have here in the United States. Just recently, President Biden put 13 million acres off limits to exploration in Alaska, including some sea areas that have critical minerals. These can all be used. So this is a problem of America's own making. This is not something that's accidental. This is not just misfortune. This is deliberate.
And as well, I have my thoughts on whether these green projects will help the environment. But I understand you're not so much on the side that solar and wind and EV right now are doing much to make the Earth cleaner. Am I correct?
Yes, you certainly are. Because if we take energy-intensive manufacturing here in the United States, and we move it offshore to China, where it's made with dirty coal-fired power plants in a dirtier way, with less regulation, that does not reduce global carbon emissions. If we want to reduce global carbon emissions, we need to have more production of natural gas, more production of nuclear power, and we need to be exporting those to other parts of the world. Recently, President Biden banned a new natural gas export terminal in Louisiana to new natural gas exports. That means that our allies have to use more coal and have less opportunity to use our clean natural gas, which would lower global carbon emissions. We need to look at the big picture. Moving things around on the chessboard is not going to reduce emissions. If we want to reduce emissions, we have to make technological changes. I mean, over the past 20 years, America has reduced carbon emissions by 1,000 million metric tons, whereas China has increased its emissions by 9,000 million metric tons. China is building 2 coal-fired power plants a week, and moving our energy-intensive manufacturing offshore doesn't reduce emissions.
All right, let me just ask you one more thing, and real quick, because this happened just a couple of days ago. Can you comment on Biden's recent announcement of increasing tariffs on an array of Chinese products, including EVs and solar panels?
It's really interesting because increasing tariffs on steel, that would just take place in 2025 and 2026. President Biden knows it's going to raise prices, so he's postponed it till after the election. And the 100% tariff on EVs, that's not going to stop Americans from buying the low-priced Chinese EVs. There's a car called the Seagull that's selling for $11,500 in Germany. 100% tariff would make it $23,000. That's less than a lot of EVs here in the United States. We need to be banning Chinese EVs, both from China and from factories in Mexico, on national security as well as economic security grounds.
All right, thank you very much today, Diana, Heritage Foundation.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
And finally, Paul McCartney is a billionaire Beatle, according to new figures released today. The former member of the Fab Four is the first British musician to be worth £1 billion, or about $1.27 billion. The 81-year-old musician's net worth had grown thanks to his 2023 Got Back tour and the rising value of his back catalog and Beyoncé's cover of the Beatles' Blackbird on her Cowboy Carter album. A final Beatles song, Now and Then, was also released in November and topped music charts. Other entertainment figures on the list include Harry Potter, author J.K. Rowling, and singer Elton John. That's all the stories we have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. And if you have any feedback for the episode, please let me know down below, or you can email me at business@ntd.com. And don't forget, as I always say, business matters. See you next week.